Mic check 1 2. It's the Y2K collector, and I've recently had to reorganize the gaming shelf because of some recent additions that I made in the first quarter of the year. And so now I'm kind of just looking back and I'm actually realizing how much my PlayStation 2 collection has grown over the last 2 years. Now, for those of you who followed the channel for years now, if you remember 2, 3 years ago, these two shelves were completely filled with PlayStation 2 games. They were just like completely filled. And what happened was I actually sold off a huge chunk of my PlayStation 2 collection to where I was able to fit pretty much all of my PlayStation 2 games on one shelf. Well, now that's kind of changed, and now the PlayStation 2 collection is kind of overlapping and it's kind of growing back into this two shelf situation again. So it has me considering, what I want to do in terms of, um, curating, kind of weeding out, organizing, seeing if there's anything that I want to get rid of out of the collection. But I've been really pleased with a lot of the pickups that I've made this year. Even some of the, the more inexpensive pickups like the Baldur's Gates and the Gauntlets and the Teen Titans. These are games that I'm actually really interested in keeping in the collection. So I don't necessarily want to let them go, but it just depends on where we stand with space. The other collection that has really grown significantly as well is the GameCube collection. There was a point where I probably only had maybe like 6 or 7 GameCube games, and that was pretty much where my GameCube collection stopped for the longest. But again, over the last couple years, I've made some really insane GameCube pickups, and have just added some really solid titles to the collection over time. So now the GameCube collection is kind of just spanning all the way across this shelf, and it pretty much takes up the entire shelf. Now, luckily, I've been able to kind of tame my original Xbox collection. I still have like 7 Xbox or 10 Xbox games. That you see here between, these games here. So I don't really need a lot of space for that. But the one thing that kind of threw a monkey wrench in my whole setup was definitely the addition of some of these Sega CD games. Because as you can see, the form factor for a lot of these games is quite different from like the PlayStation 2 stuff. And it just kind of makes it a little bit more difficult to kind of stack some of these games here. So unless it gets back to a point where I have a whole row of just Sega CD and Sega Saturn games, it's going to be kind of tough to kind of mix and match how I kind of just stack these games together. So I do want to slowly continue adding certain Sega CD and Sega Saturn games to the collection. So that's still like a work in progress. We'll see how that works. But one of the things that I wanted to for sure get squared away was how I laid out my PlayStation 1, my Dreamcast, and my Sega Saturn games. So I've kind of condensed all of those games onto this one shelf. I don't have extensive PlayStation 1 or Dreamcast or Sega Saturn like import. I don't have like an extensive collection of those games. So luckily they were all able to fit on this shelf. But again, you have these like Neo Geo AES games that have a bit of a different form factor. So it's kind of tough to kind of mix and match when you're kind of stacking. But I played a little bit of Tetris with these games and tried my best to kind of make them all work and fit together. Now, for those of you who know, this shelf actually used to be occupied by my PS3 collection, which has actually been moved down. I kept my Xbox 360 games on this same shelf, so we still have pretty much all the Xbox 360 on this shelf with a little bit of spillover from some other stuff just taken up here on this shelf. But this is all still pretty much Xbox 360. But then this is the new home for all of the PlayStation 3 games. So the PlayStation 3 collection is now just kind of sitting on this shelf. And it's kind of cool because the majority of the PlayStation 3 games that I have in my collection are pretty much right here. But now is where I kind of start to run out of room. So here on this shelf is where I pretty much only have some spillover PS3 games, some special editions, and then that one long box PlayStation 1 game, Phil Soma, a pretty decent shoot 'em up, if I might add. And then I have the start of my 3DS collection kind of sitting here. So this is where you see some of the 3DS games. And then down here is where I have more of the 3DS and some of my DS collection. The problem I'm running into is that pretty much my Wii and Wii U collection take up the remainder of this bottom shelf. And then after that, I'm pretty much out of room. So this is where the rest of my DS collection is now. And I kind of have to figure out where I'm going to put these DS games. So I'm not buying any more shelves, that's for sure. So now I have to figure out if I'm going to sell some games, get some games out of the collection, and if so, which games am I going to sell or remove in order to be able to fit these DS games into the shelf. Because again, I'm not buying any more shelves, I'm not adding any shelves to the collection or adding any shelves to the game room because I don't want to do that. So that's where I'm capped at. And that's one of the ways that I use to kind of keep the collection under control. I can see that there might be some PS3 games that I'm willing to kind of weed out of the collection to make some room for it. There may be one, maybe two Xbox 360 games I'm willing to kind of remove out of the collection to make room for it. But at this point, I think I'm I'm definitely at the stage where if I'm considering adding a game, I have to be willing to sell a game. I can no longer like just keep adding just because the room is pretty much it's over as far as space goes. So whenever I buy something, I have to be thinking about what game I'm gonna sell to make room for the game that I'm adding. And it looks like there might be some games that I have to kind of sell now. It's either sell or just take a big stack of games and kind of convert them for trade to perhaps pick up something else. So I'm going to be working on kind of pulling some games together. I do have a trade in mind for a Neo Geo AES game. So I may pull some games together and see if I can pull off that type of a trade. We're going to see. We're going to see. But I got to say overall, I am pleased with just kind of some of the titles that I've been adding, some of the games that I've added, both the rare and expensive stuff along with the more common stuff. I think they're all just a really good mix of solid games. But we definitely have no more room to go overboard, and we got to figure out where we're going to put all of these DS games. So let me know what you guys do when you're running out of space. Do you buy more shelves? Do you sell stuff? Do you trade stuff? How do you keep your games in check? And I'll catch you in the next video. It's the Y2K Collector. Take it easy.